Good morning, everyone. To this pretty nice day out here in Michigan. Before I begin with this morning's Dharma talk, which is entitled Enlightened Outflows. That couple of words should get your attention, perhaps, if you've heard of the word enlightenment and if you've heard of the word outflows. But before that, I'd like to thank everyone for all of the support, not only your participation, being here, being on the Zoom screen, or listening on, or watching on YouTube, wherever it may be. Thank you. And if you can help us in that way, of course, continue to do so. If you can help us financially, please help us to do this, whatever this is, this spiritual path. This is very rare. Look around and see if you can find anything else like this. May come close. Maybe better. Maybe something you'd rather do than this. Go do that. Let me know about it. Maybe I'll go too. So continue to help us if you can. So enlightened means awake. It's the conventional word. I'm using that deliberately. I usually say realized. And so I'm using the word enlightenment because it's so common. And I'm using the word outflows, not because it's so common, but if you're a practitioner, you've studied Buddhism, you know that an outflow is usually seen as something negative. We outflow, something happens, somebody does something or acts a certain way. We don't like it, so we get mad at them. We shake our finger at them because all we see is a simple cause and effect. I'm over here, someone did this, and I feel this way. So what do? We immediately, but maybe not immediately, but often we blame that person for how we feel. And sometimes the relative truth is so powerful and so in our face, so to speak, that there's no choice. It's choiceless. You have to blame them. They're the ones who got in your way or had drove into the back of your car or something like that. Probably not intentionally. But all kinds of cause and effect is happening there where there's praise and blame, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth. The whole world is dealing with this all the time. That's why there are wars everywhere. Because instead of looking with intelligence at any given situation, we don't want to do that. We want to just win. We want to be the ones who are right, up to and including Bradley fighting vehicles, atomic weapons, 1,000-pound bombs. It's so incredibly stupid and ignorant that it goes unnoticed because it's covered with the laminations of concepts, ideas, constructions, judgments, evaluations, and the constant elaboration that people do who are really, really intelligent in a relative way. Really, really intelligent in a relative way, not an ultimate way. They don't see the ultimate nature of what this is. If you're interested in seeing the ultimate nature of what this is, you're going to have to train your mind. I'm not talking about graduate school. That's a way of training your mind in the relative way, and it's very valuable. You can't really do without education. It's just it is just the way that is presented is about controlling people rather than educating people. Please disagree with me. You feel up to that? Not yet, though. I'll give you some time. So conventionally, we think of the outflow as a reaction to something, which in the teaching, we are endeavoring to keep those back a little bit. Don't do anything unless you have to, is the teaching that I talk about, because it's very simple. If you're doing something you don't have to do, it's extra. You don't have to do anything. But sometimes you have to do something because of this and this and this. You may have all kinds of justifications for it. They are probably relatively correct, but the relativity does not take into consideration the complete vast nature of consciousness and that which is arising in consciousness, which are these human forms that we think as us. It is not you. There is no personal self that has any validity beyond somebody calling out your name. Hey, Joe. Yeah, what? Going to the store? Yeah, I am. Could you pick something up for me? Sure, I will. Relative truth is very powerful. We have the store, we have Joe, we have someone asking a question. It just seems like this is real. And what does the ego mind do? The self-centered mind? It buys into that. And most of the world, billions of people are living their lives based on this stage play that they think is real. And it is a movie. And if you believe it, you'll live the rest of your life hoping for a good outcome. What you're missing is you're writing a script. You're writing a script for your own, suffering and difficulty and even destruction. Because sometimes it gets so intensely horrible that we want to end it. But you created that. When I say you, I don't mean the personal you. I don't mean the ego necessarily, but consciousness that is curled up into a ball and eventually becomes that ego, fear-based consciousness. You don't have to do that. If you're buying into right and wrong, that's the basis of it. If you think some things are right and some things are wrong, you're wrong. And I'm just delighted to say it in that way. Because sometimes you are right and sometimes you are wrong, but it's not always the case. Dependent origination are the causes and conditions that brought you into this world, including your mom and your dad came together. But there's all kinds of other causes and conditions that are untraceable. I don't care how much you dial into ancestry.com. You're only going to find out a bunch of relative things that make you feel, and I am going to repeat this, make you feel like you're getting somewhere. You cannot get anywhere. Everything is circular. Examples are everywhere. Here's one of them. Don't use a digital clock. Use an analog clock so you can actually have some kind of representation of what illusion looks like. This is illusion, circles. There's no such thing as this. This is an invention. There's no such thing as time. You invent that based on hope for something better and fear of something worse. Hope and fear. And what does that look for? A self that is frightened by anything. So the deluded or the confused outflow is that one where you're blaming someone for how you feel, maybe even attacking that person. Any number of things. I could make up all kinds of stories around that would have some kind of descriptive quality that would maybe relate with what your life has been like when you fight with what shows up, whatever comes into your life and you fight with it instead of seeing what it is. See what that is. Whatever shows up in your mind has a right to be there. And I can go into detail about why that is the case. But I won't be able to do the one thing that you have to do. You have to see it. And if you don't spend, this is not a threat. It's just an observation based on working at this for half a century. If you don't spend some time getting to know yourself, sit down, hold still, sit symmetrical, and watch the asymmetry of the mind. Go this way, go that way. Hold the only thing still that you can't hold your mind still because you can't locate it. The mind is here, the consciousness is here, but the true nature of that does not have any more relative existence than that which you give it by grasping and rejecting. Grasping, desire. Rejecting, aggression. Or the other one that we use sometimes, just ignoring, turning away, whatever. Pizza, bingo, video games, the lottery, canasta for that matter. Something to distract. None of those are wrong, but there are ways of distracting yourself from your true nature. And if you ever stop distracting yourself, you may get a real strong glimpse of who you actually are, your actual identity, which is not separate from anyone else's. Your worst enemy, you're not separate from them. But if you think you are, you'll attack them or you'll ignore them or you'll do something with it. Don't do anything with anything. So the deluded outflow is a fighting with things or agreeing with things. Those are equally difficult. If you agree with something without just because you want to agree, or if you fight with something just because you're put off by something about it. Don't take any position on anything. And the process of doing that is to observe how much you have a knee-jerk reaction to everything. You take a position on things. Very difficult. So an enlightened outflow, I can get to that one. I'm delighted to respond to questions if you have them as we go along. Enlightened means something that is actively coming out of an individual that is not based on passion, grasping, wanting, desire, greediness, lust, and is not based on fear, hatred, getting rid of, pushing away, manipulating the world so that you feel better, sometimes called greediness, and not based on I'm going to take a nap. That's not so bad. Probably should take a nap. I take a few of those. So again, I'll go back over those three: passion, aggression, and ignorance. Not about getting rid of those. This is a startling. If you reflect on it, this is a startling information that's coming out of this teaching person from looking at this for a long time. You don't have to get rid of greed. You don't have to get rid of anger or hatred or avarice. You don't have to get rid of shutting down or closing off. You just have to be aware of it. Just be aware, and then it will move in whatever direction that when I say it, I'm talking about dependent origination, the whole chemistry of the world, the whole chemistry of every star in the sky, every bird, every worm in the ground, every human being, every thought you've ever had is not separate from ultimate nature. And it is also not separate from the illusion that there is some kind of separation going on. This is an illusion. The one who sees that this is an illusion is no longer attached, detached, or ignoring anything. Those people are rare. Maybe there is no such thing. I'm not here to convince you of anything, especially about this person. I have no propaganda, but I have a few recommendations for you. I have no guarantee, but I have a few recommendations for you. You might want to look at your mind. Forget about Buddhism. Forget about this stuff. Forget about this person. Find out who you are. Don't get your identity from me, from Buddhism, from any political situation, any religious situation, from anyone else other than yourself. And the only way you can do that is to, socially distance yourself from everybody, not because of COVID, but because of samsara, this world of circularity. Go there, sit down, hold still, sit symmetrical, and watch the disturbances in your mind come and go without pushing. Watch the disturbance in your mind without grasping or explaining or evaluating or blaming someone. Even though there's someone is to blame, they triggered, they did this, this, and this, and obviously you could take them to court and sue them, possibly. I mean, there's that much relative truth that is very, very heavy and very weighty, and is supported by all kinds of cultural laws. Not wrong. It's not a mistake. We need that since there is no strong spiritual path in the relative world. We need something. So we have these relative structures for those people who have the insight that we could just try to do good and help others. Very difficult to do that if you're not very, very clear on what good and evil are. Sacred and profane. If you don't know what they are, if you think they're opposites, then you'll continue to fight with this world, and you may end up being murdered yourself. Not a threat, just an observation. So enlightened outflow. That's also by Dogal Khyentse Rinpoche. Has a book called, I think it's called Enlightened Courage, and it's just being awake and seeing what this is and having the courage to just do what needs to be done and don't do what doesn't need to be done. Do what needs to be done. That's an enlightened outflow. You see what it is. If you're clear about who you are, if you're not clear about who you are, then you will make decisions based on hope for something better, fear of something worse. You'll be participating in the whole orgy, this crazy circus we live in, where there are people yelling at each other, and if they're not yelling, then they're aiming guns at each other. Just watch CNN once in a while, or watch free speech TV to see people that look like robots because they're so covered up you can't see any personality there. There's a reason for that. the people in white suits, or I should say white shirts, the people who are running things, get these other people to dress up like robots and then attack people who are just trying to say, maybe we shouldn't be murdering people. So I'm not against protest, but I'm saying you might want to look at the difficulty here before you take this unexamined difficulty out into the world and project it on others. You've heard me say this 15 or 20 times in the last year, probably. We do it through awareness, not through some kind of right and wrong mentality. So enlightened outflow would come from one, a person who is no longer separating themselves from anything, has realized their true nature, which is very ordinary. They may not look special to anybody. They may be a teacher, they may not be. But if they do function into the world by any kind of activity, it comes from seeing what's commonly called the big picture. Although even you can't even call this the big picture because there's no framework around it. It's bigger than the big picture. And it's also hasn't moved an inch. You have to see it. If you see it, then if you do go into action in this way or that way, it's because you are seeing this so clearly that you are dancing with it rather than operating against anything or for anything. You're actually with the flow that's happening. So to others standing around you in your living room, in your society, in your community, or in your spiritual community, your Sangha, may think that what you're doing is wrong or shouldn't be doing that. But unless you have the eye, unless you have the wisdom eye, unless you have that, unless you see clearly yourself, not just your ego mind, which is fear-based or hope-based or right and wrong-based, but you see it with your wisdom eye, which isn't even an eye, because it's not separate from anything. So there isn't anything even being seen. It's that clear. If you think that I'm contradicting myself, come and get me. Point it out to me. And I'll probably agree with you. I don't fight with anything. I don't agree with anything. Well, unless you attack me, then I'll agree with you. You got to protect yourself somehow. So how would this look? Enlightened outflow. It would seem to be very spontaneous. It would come out of any individual who was in a particular situation, a particular milieu that had a lot of friction or discontinuity or asymmetry going on that would seem to be harmful to maybe to you and maybe to others, would be able to step in there and do something in a way that would help the disharmony stop disconnecting from the reality of what this is. This is sometimes called upaya, which means skillful means. This is a Sanskrit word, I believe, from wisdom and upaya. Wisdom and skillful means are not separate. Upaya, the skillful means the activity that is skillful. In other words, operating with the situation rather than against it, not going to war with it, and also not agreeing with it, not being seduced by it. So it gives the appearance of objectivity. Is it objectivity? Not exactly. Because in order to be objectivity, there has to be a subject. And in this situation, there's no subject. This is sometimes called, in the tradition, threefold purity. No actor, no action, and nothing acted upon. Pardon. Are there some questions either on Zoom or here in the Zendo? Please don't hesitate. Ondo.
Ondo bowing. Is an enlightened outflow when we can watch ourselves act out of passion? Is that enlightened bowing?
I'm not exactly clear on what you're asking. You want to paraphrase a little bit?
Ondo bowing. If we see ourselves reacting angrily, or but it's all out of grasping at a story, but we can see ourselves do it. Is that enlightened?
That's neither enlightened or unenlightened. It's the path. That's the way the path shows up. We see we're in a fix. We see we're having intense emotions, and we see that we can't help but point a finger or blame. Then that's the path. That what needs to be done there, as a practitioner of meditation or a student of Buddhism, or is to less is better. Don't. But if you find yourself just impulsively reacting, then make that something you're observing rather than something you're judging. Try to get it so that you can see how the chemistry of how that's working, the mechanics of it. So you get to know yourself, you know how your anger works, you know that it takes some kind of a trigger to trigger that area of the consciousness that seems like a dark room, that suddenly everything lights up in that dark room, and all the so-called demons start coming around looking for revenge. And so to watch, just observe that. And that actually takes quite a bit of courage to do that, because the easy way out is to just believe those thoughts and feelings and just hammer away at the person who seems to be triggering or doing that. More, if you haven't. The ultimate, if you were to see what that is and you were to function as the title of the Dharma talk is here, enlightened, outflow, then you would not know, you would only know what you're doing as you're doing it. You would see that you picked this up and put it over here. You would see that you're doing that, but you wouldn't have any story around that of what a great person you are and how enlightened you are and how you're just doing what you need to do. You have no comment. There's no playwright standing next to you. There is no play. There's just this, and it's empty of a self and it's empty of an other. But these are concepts that are pointing to something that you have to see yourself. You have to see this yourself. If not, then you'll continue to look for right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, success and failure, pain and pleasure. More?
So, Ondavine, so when you are talking about enlightened outflows, you're talking about someone who has seen, not separate.
They've seen the true nature of everything. Yes, they're not functioning out of a misunderstanding of reality. They're not functioning out of right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, life and death even. It's called non-dual, or Advaita is the Sanskrit. Yes.
So, Ondavine, when we are interacting with someone like that has seen their true nature.
Like who?
Someone who has seen their true nature.
Okay.
What can we learn? What can we see?
Is this person that you're speculating about your teacher?
Yes.
Then everything that they do, no matter what it is, I'm happy to respond to any questions around this. Don't hesitate, please. No matter what it is, should be seen as a teaching. If you have a teacher, you should receive it as a teaching and not leap away from what it is to whether it's right or wrong, because it's very likely it can appear like it's very wrong. This is why it's sometimes called crazy wisdom, because it doesn't align itself with the ego mind that is generally judging everything. More?
How do we receive and not judge?
Yes.
Judge.
Yeah, the way you do that. Thank you for that wonderful question, because this is the part that I enjoy saying this. You're going to have to separate yourself from everything, the teacher and everything. Sit down and hold still. Call it meditation, call it cucumbers. Sit down, hold still, and observe the disturbance in the mind stream where nothing is happening other than just thoughts are coming and going, coming and going. And what you do by doing that, you're just getting used to receiving, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling, remembering, predicting, analyzing, whatever shows up spontaneously. You're practicing just receiving that. And by training yourself to just receive, this takes years, because we have spent centuries, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, we've been back here. Here you are again. Here I am again. Back at the same thing we've been doing since beginningless time. Trying to understand what this is. What does it mean to be a living being fundamentally? Not what can I get? How can I get ahead? How can I get the right mascara? Or how can I get the right bodybuilding equipment? It's not that I'm against any of those things. I'm just saying those are very distracting. And in order to get to responding to the question you're asking, we have to look at a very small version of life in general, which is the mind stream. And that's where you actually have a blade. You need to sharpen that blade. If you're always chopping vegetables, thinking, if you're always out in the world, thinking, analyzing, guessing at this, guessing at that, pushing on this, pulling on that, based on hope and fear, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, and the things that you desire, second noble truth, wanting things to be different, first noble truth, life is suffering, trying to cure that, correct that by twisting samsara, or this everyday life in a certain way, so you just get happiness out the other end, and no suffering. So sometimes people try to do that with drugs. It works for a while, 15, 20 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, chemicals of some kind. It needs to be done, and I'm very biased here. It needs to be done with the awareness. And what is the awareness? Before you say that's a sound, that's awareness. Before you know what that is, that's awareness. The immediacy of it, rather than it's being filled up with, I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, she shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't be doing that, I've got to learn how to stop this, how can I, why do I keep feeling this way? Why do I wake up depressed? Blah, blah, blah. Constant comment on everything that does what? It's just an active form of ignoring. You're ignoring your true nature, which is right in your face every moment in the form of everything else. Everything you're looking at is a mirror. Look closely. Look in your partner's eyes without thinking. You can't just do that, but you can learn or understand how to do that by gazing at the wall, as Bodhidharma did in the 6th century for 9 years. One of our lineage holders that was chanted in the sutra this morning. More?
Sokuzan, if we are receiving a teaching, does it have, or do we eventually have an understanding of what is being taught?
Not in the conventional sense. And if you study Wittgenstein, who was a philosopher, you will eventually understand what he was talking about. Just like if you study Ouspensky, or if you study Chogyam Trungpa, you study anyone, you will eventually understand what they're talking about. But what you seem to be asking about is a different kind of understanding. And it goes beyond the right and wrong, logical or reasonable understanding. It actually goes through all of the beliefs, opinions, ideas, judgments, and hallucinations that you think are real into ultimate reality, which actually can't even be named. Even ultimate reality is a misunderstanding. Gentleman in the red shirt.
Jake Valley.
Jake?
Is all you need to do to, I guess, like sit and observe your mind, or is there more necessary, I guess, to make progress?
So thank you for the question. So I think it's dependent upon the person. There are teachers who will teach this differently. I'm not here to argue with anyone, but I'm saying I trust you to know what you need to do. I have students right on here that I've never met face to face. They're on Zoom that come and attend the book studies, which we have, I don't know, 5 or 6 a week, something like that, or come and attend the Dharma talks, which there are a few every week. It's been going on for years, or maybe just watch YouTube. We have that kind of technology, so it's a lot easier than it was when I started, when all you had was a book, if you can find a bookstore. And so then it's kind of up to you, how close do you want to get to a teaching person? Do you need a teacher? If you do, then don't do guesswork. Don't go towards the teacher unless you have to. Like I would say, if I were to make a story about it, listening to me and say, what Sokuzan says is interesting, but I'm not that interested. There's a lot of people out there saying things. I would trust that. Don't come this way at all. It's not paranoia. It's a different word for it. I don't know what it is, but when you hear someone speak the truth, there can be nobody there who's speaking the truth, and there's no one who's listening. And you can't really make that into any kind of you can't, there's not enough warp and woof in there to make any fabric out of that. Although that has been occurring for centuries. It's called the robe of the Buddha, which is invisible. Can I help you further with that?
Is there any way to tell that you're on the right path?
No way. There's no proof. Spiritual path, there's no proof. There's just some kind of a feeling or inspiration that's somehow in the background, that's like somebody whispering at you and you turn around, there's no one there. It's like that. It's not exactly that, but that might be a good metaphor. Certainly that was that way for me when I met my teacher in 1973. It was before I met him. I ran into his books and I freaked out in the bookstore when I realized this guy was alive. That frightened me. And I ran out of there. 2 weeks later, I kind of thought, well, I'd give him a chance, maybe see if, maybe he has something to say. Big mistake. Went back and I was finished as an individual lifetime of being a great artist or whatever the hell it was I was trying to do. And I had to step on the path. It was choiceless for me. Further? Thank you. Yes.
Sokuzan, you were saying if you receive something as a teaching, you might not understand it in the conventional sense.
Yes.
What does it mean to receive something as a teaching?
Not know what it means.
Sokuzan, what is being taught or pointed at in that instance?
Ultimate reality, your true nature, who you actually are. Beyond this body-mind complex, which is going down in what, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? You're pretty young. It might be around another 50 years. Think so? You don't think so? Are you predicting the future?
I don't know.
What is it you want to know? I heard the question, but what do you want to know?
Sokuzan, I'll fill in something I don't understand with stories. Well, could it
Okay.
mean this?
Go ahead.
So does that obstruct or get in the way of the teaching?
Does what get annoying?
My story is about what it could mean.
Yes.
So in order to receive a teaching, do we need,
In order.
in order to,
Did you say in order
I may
to?
have,
In order.
in
Okay.
order,
Got it.
in order to receive a teaching as a teaching.
In order to what? Aren't you glad I'm not doing this to you? Go ahead, in order.
If I were to want to receive a teaching
You were to want to receive the teachings, yeah,
as a teaching,
as a teaching. Gotcha.
is that only possible if I don't understand it conventionally?
I wouldn't get too chemical about it, of right and wrong, or too conceptual about it. You get that whole area gets very vague and kind of there's a lot of insecurity for the ego in that area. But if there's an inspiration to see the truth, if you want the truth, you're not going to settle for any half-assed explanation or anybody's stupid propaganda that is trying to control you. So look at the teacher, the teaching in the situation, and see what's really being offered there. If it's the truth, you're going to know it. That doesn't mean that if you start to get paranoid, that you should look at that and see that that's possibly just your ego screaming to get out of here, so you don't have to look at the truth. So you may understand, you may not. There's no certain way it's going to show up for you. The combination of causes and conditions that arise and present us with this particular woman right here, present you with your body-mind complex, which you think you are. Look closely, find out who you are. There's an aspect of consciousness that is this body, or is that body, or this body, but it's not you. Who you actually are is much more profound and vast than that. Well,
That's a good line. What, when you recommend receive everything the teacher does as a teaching,
yes,
I'm not sure what kind of intent, what can I do to do that?
you're doing it. You live in a monastery, you live in the complex of the monastery. You've sewn a robe, you haven't been ordained as a monk yet, but it looks like that's coming unless you decide to do something else. So you're already doing everything you can do, as far as I can see. I don't know of anything else. You're on the path to do that. This doesn't mean that everybody should become a monk. Doesn't mean that everybody should receive jukai or precepts. Doesn't mean that everybody should listen to what I'm saying or come to this monastery. or pay any attention to anything at all. It's up to you to know what to do with your karma, with how you feel, how things look to you. Trust yourself. When I say trust yourself, I'm not saying believe your thoughts. I'm not saying believe your emotions. And also don't disbelieve your thoughts or disbelieve your emotions. That's a very difficult area because it's almost like a balance in there, especially from the point of ego. The ego wants to come in and this is how it is. The ego wants to come in and say, well, this is correct, or I'm correct, or the other ploy of the ego is to say, well, I'm wrong. I can't get anything right. We also scold ourselves or be full of shame, which is also ego-based. So all you have to do is that's what it'll eventually look like that. You have a hand under you holding you up. That's what will happen if you meet the teacher. At some point, the teacher will be gone. And you need to keep going. And that may happen while the teacher is actually alive, or may happen when the teacher has passed on. There's no standard for any of that. More. Like ask me the part that I didn't respond to. Are you sweating?
I am, it's really hot.
I don't think it's very hot.
Oh,
I have a big heavy robe on. I'm fine.
I'm pretty warm.
Are you warm? You're warm. Anybody else warm? Is anybody cool? Warm and cool? Uh-oh. Yes,
Ian Bowing, you spoke of trying to squeeze happiness out of life.
I
with
do.
Something like
Yes.
drugs or. And
Anyway, activity, playing golf, just play golf constantly because you're a little bit better than everybody. It gives you a good feeling. You get a little bit of what is that? What is that chemical that rises in somebody when they
Endorphins?
huh?
Endorphins? Or
Yes.
serotonin? All of those.
I remember when I pronounced it serotonin once. And my daughter corrected me. Dad, it's pronounced, what do you say, serotonin? Yeah, it's not serotonin. It's difficult to be corrected by children. Yes, go ahead.
Ian Bowing. And today, at least, you followed that up with. You're going to have to do it with awareness. And
Yes.
now what I'm wondering is, what does happiness have to do with awareness?
Relative happiness is always opposed to relative unhappiness, or sometimes we don't have an unhappiness because of something we've lost or something that has happened. We just wake up and we're not feeling very good. We're kind of depressed that day. Some people get together, 15 people all get together, not feeling bad and have no cause for it. They're going to, they'd all agree on that word, depression, but it's a different thing happening in each consciousness there. So, and if those people don't go to the wall or have some way of looking at the mind more closely, not getting somebody to do it for you. And that being said, I'm not against psychiatrists or therapists or any that needs to be. There's some people that's how they need to do this, and they should. Some meditators even need that kind of help. So as far as happiness or unhappiness, it's a matter of looking at what that situation is, looking at the relative situation of being happy and uplifted, and then being sad or depressed or down and out, however it may be. And so what's your question?
Ian Bowing, what does awareness have to do with happiness?
Awareness is just the container or the area in which happiness arises and falls, but awareness doesn't go anywhere. And if awareness is immersed in the ego formation of me, and my stuff, or saturated or stained with that misunderstanding of consciousness, which gathers into a knot of me here, looking for success and failure, looking for control, then happiness is already the case. If it's not covered up by this kind of grasping, this kind of chokehold that the ego mind has on your consciousness. You know what I'm talking about. You have a further question?
Ian Bowing, you said happiness is already the case?
Yes. Happiness is not a state of mind. It is mind. Just like sadness is not a state of mind. It is mind. Consciousness that is liberated doesn't mind what shows up in it. It's like the sky is not concerned about, it doesn't get feeling really up when all the rainbows appear, nor does it get all depressed when lightning bolts come and rainstorms and hurricanes and tornadoes, the sky doesn't give a shit. Is that blunt enough? Because the sky, it's just the space in which things occur. It's the perfect host. Your consciousness, if you can do this, if you can see who you are fundamentally, then everything is welcome to come and go, because you understand its true nature, that it is not separate from you or anything else. Completely generous. Anything that occurs needs to occur. You may not know the causes and conditions of why that happened, because you can only see so far back. You only can see to last week Thursday, but you can't see 1,500 years ago. And you can't see into the future. The future and the past are not two different things. They just look like it. They look like it. Like the right hand and the left hand are not two different things. But they look like it. Don't they? Would you agree with that?
That's,
Oh, okay. Yes.
When you bind, the title of your talk is Enlightened Outflows.
Yes.
Is that limited to just someone who sees what this is?
Not necessarily. It can, and everyone has enlightenment, everyone has awakening. So there may be times when you are just so right there present. The ego may be there, but may not be included, or may be included somewhat. And you just see a thing happening a certain way, and you have a kind of a natural objectivity to it. You're still in the relative realm. You're still, you have not attained awakening, but your functioning is being very respectful for the confusion. If you see confusion, you're not going to blame anyone or anybody for it. Then you can probably, kind of like an ambulance driver that comes and shows up and sees this terrible confusion and just knows what to do with it. So that's a category of it. But to be that person who knows what to do, no matter what happens in their life, the kitchen table, or in the world scene, this is a person who has actually seen through the nature of illusion and is no longer deluded by it. So it's a kind of an objectivity that just shows up just because of the nature of relative truth, the nature of absolute truth. It's going to show up somewhat. But if you try to grasp onto that and make use of that as an ego, I'm the person who's always objective, is always able to help everybody, then it turns on you, and then you start to get disappointed when you're not able to be acknowledged as this great helping person. There's no credential for it. Just like with awakening or the Buddha's truth, there's no credential. You do not get something. This is not a credential. It's very nice, but it's not a credential. It's empty of anything you may project onto it. And it's full of what it actually is. What is it? I don't know. Find out. You find out. I won't tell you what it is. Yes.
When you're bowing. In the Maitri Bhavana that we recite every day, there's a part of a line that says, radiating friendliness over the entire world.
Yes.
Is that an enlightened outflow when we do that?
Yes. And it's choiceless. You can't help but do that. If you're awake, that's happening all the time because there's no center to anything. But at some point, even that doesn't work because fundamentally nothing happens. So fundamentally, there's no center or any fringe to anything. There's no center to anything, no fringe. This is an illusion, my friends. This is unreal. It's vividly unreal in emptiness. Vividly, it's so vivid that it's painful. It's difficult. Very, very difficult. Difficult to have people pass away. Heartbreaking. But nothing actually happens to who you are. Just your body mind collapses. Who you actually are can't be interrupted because it has not begun. That's an illusion that coming into this world as a human being, it looks like you're here and something's happening and you can somehow get control of things or get people to vote for you or give you money or something, or you have control. Not much, if any, very little. More? Sir?
Sanji, is my attempt at trying to believe your teaching change it to a delusion?
Yeah, I don't believe anything I say. Consider it, but don't, but believing is when you see something, hear something, and it comes together in some kind of a structure. Sokuzan said this or that, and then you believe it. Don't do that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't believe it, don't disbelieve it, don't look away. That means that it's part of awareness. There are times when what I'm saying might apply, other times when it may not. So if you set it up as a standard, then you stop actually looking at what shows up, because you just apply your belief to it, which is quite often what the world is doing. Believing this or believing that or disbelieving or siding with this thing. Don't side with anything. You may have to prostrate at the feet of the teacher or the Buddha. You may have to do that for a while just so you can get off dead center as far as your damned ego. You're just full of yourselves. How do I know? I am too. I couldn't teach if I didn't know what this was here. So what's the difference between your belief in yourself and my belief in myself? You're deluded by it, and I'm not. I haven't gotten rid of anything. Push on me a little bit if you want to see my ego. I'd be happy to smack you one. Or run away from you, possibly.
Captain bowing.
Yes, sir.
Who is the one who is not deluded? Bowing.
It's not a person. The one who may appear still as a person, but their consciousness is no longer located anywhere. It's beyond location in time or space. It's beyond it. So and that's the way of talking about it, but fundamentally and ultimately there is no beyond, because if there's a beyond, there has to be a here. There's something to be beyond it. So it goes beyond all of that. Even the word doesn't work. Children in the yard. Is that Elijah? Huh?
He said, bye-bye.
He said bye-bye, and we aren't even going anywhere.
It's still bye-bye.
Still bye-bye. Do we have a few minutes if there are other questions? Let me do Robert.
Robert Bowen,
Yes, sir.
are enlightened outflows completely dispassionate?
It won't matter. So that because passion, we're not trying to get rid of passion or make it dispassion. Dispassion is a teaching in Buddhism, beyond passion or dispassion, but I don't teach it. And the reason I don't teach it is because my understanding is nothing is separate from anything else. So therefore, it's so completely open that it doesn't matter what comes down the hallway. If dispassion comes down, welcome. If passion comes down, welcome. If anger, passion, aggression, ignorance, you can't find an enemy anywhere. Everything is just, the ultimate word there, and which I use very rarely, but I can't think of another word that comes even close, would be love. But it's not the attached kind of love. It's just a complete, stunning appreciation for every turtle, every cloud, everything, every passion, every dispassion, everything is included. There is not a thing out of place anywhere. This is called the great perfection by the Dzogchen masters in the Tibetan tradition. Everything is completely perfect. It doesn't mean that something terrible didn't just happen. Of course it did, but it's part of, what do they call, what's that fancy word, the grand scheme of things? Is that something you made up? No. Good. Nope. Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Nope. More, Robert?
Robert Bowen, so where does the authority come from?
There is no authority. There is no authority. And when Koban, my teacher, my Zen master, said, "Get your own authority," he knew what you were going to run into. If you trained your mind long enough, you would eventually. There is no central authority for anything. There's just this, and you may appear like an authority, like I do, sitting up here. But if I sat, as I said many times, if I sat in the parking lot on a garbage can, in my underwear, not that funny. I wouldn't have any students, and the students I would have. Let's go study to that guy who's out there smoking weed. Let's really get high with that guru guy. Oh, no, it's better than that, and it's worse. It's better than that because you're liberated. And it's worse than that because the path leading to that is like the Buddha said in the First Noble Truth, life is suffering. He did not equivocate. He said life is suffering. When he first said that, or when I first heard that he said that back in a long time ago, I thought, well, I can't really mean that because sometimes it's okay. No, it's never okay. Life is suffering. If you're a living being, you have nerve endings, something is happening in those nerve endings, not only the seeing, smelling, tasting, hearing, and thinking and feeling, but something is being abraded somewhere, or you wouldn't even be in this life. Dying is painful, being born is painful, and that area in between is what? It is an illusion. It's unreal. Nothing's been born. What's been born, it goes away. It's an illusion. But what hasn't been born can't disappear. But you have to actually realize that in your consciousness that who you are hasn't appeared and therefore can't go away. Just another word for that, the fancy word that sometimes uses eternity. But eternity is just a commentary on what? A lot of time. It is even time is extra. It's unreal. Analog. But the reason I recommend you use an analog clock instead of a digital clock, the digital clock's even worse. It actually pretends things are real. You notice that? Like 4:59 in the morning. A digital clock. What the hell is that? At least here you have some semblance of, well, here's the sun coming up. That's the big hand. And then the sun going down, the big hand goes down, hits around 5. So if the big hand fixed, it's 5. And it's dark, you're probably in Alaska. Is that? Help me with this, you guys.
It's the other, it's the small hand tells you the time, the what's
Oh, thanks.
morning or night.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Come on, you guys. Final question? 2 final questions. Okay, you can have next to the final question.
Wondervine, is this Dharma talk a enlightened outflow?
It's an outflow. And then if you can receive it, that's an enlightened outflow. If you can't receive it, then you've done something with it. And not blaming you. I'm saying so you follow me a little bit? So there's no I'm enlightened and it's very situational, and it's between those aspects of illusion we're deluded by. And if you're deluded by me and you guys, by the relativity there, then it's there may be an enlightened outflow there, but it needs to be seen by the one who's receiving it. The one who is speaking, this person is, I would say yes, because I don't have any choice about anything. I have to speak in the way I speak. And I'm not saying it's correct or incorrect. I'm not saying it's enlightened or unenlightened. If I take any position on anything, everything I have said starts to do what? Rot. Starts to just stink like something that was killed. Yes.
Even bowing, that question really hooked me into another question,
Which question?
Ondo's question.
What was your question?
Is it Dharma talk an enlightened outflow?
Yeah, go ahead.
Even bowing, are all outflows enlightened if they are received?
By how many people?
Well, just the best you can do yourself.
No, I mean, if I say, Tanambogo, which is an island in the South Pacific, and you just receive that without comment, without accepting, rejecting, or shutting down, then is that enlightened? Is that what you mean?
As an example, yeah.
Yes, that is. Did that help?
Maybe.
You getting ready to go to the South Pacific now? Is there really an island there called Tanambogo?
Beyond bowing, are all the outflows of the world and myself enlightened if they are received by the one who's looking?
If what you're asking about is relative truth actually okay if nobody fights with anything, or agrees with anything, but just receives it. Yes, that's called enlightened, that's called enlightened society. No accepting, no rejecting, no shutting down, just that. The way I talk about it is CCC, communicate, cooperate, collaborate. Listen to what people are saying without comment. And then if you hear clearly what is happening, then you can possibly cooperate with them. And going further, you could even collaborate on something that you have a mutual understanding of, something that needs to be done for others. Yes.
Mozuku bowing. If we were actually receiving something as a teaching and doing nothing with it, would we be aware that we were doing that?
You may. But it would show up differently for different people. Excuse me. More?
Mozuku bowing. I've heard you say that the part of our mind that we're training on the cushion, we can't see that part of our mind. Is something happening in the teacher-student relationship that we may not be able to see, even if we're chattering about it?
Yes. We can't be aware, you can't, we can all put our mind behind the altar on the part of the wall, and we can't see that there was a circle drawn on that wall, but everyone can now. If we move this out, will there be a circle on that wall or not? This is what the imagination, this is how powerful the mind is. We can imagine things, and we can, together, we can give them a reality that is more powerful than if there were a circle on the wall. It's just sometimes called agreement. We just agree on that. Powerful. And it happens, all our culture is just full of that kind of structures, those kinds of structures. A good example of that, the extreme version of that is fundamentally helpful and provides some kind of a relative sanity for a while in the relative world, which is full of wars and full of all kinds of antagonism, is law, which Shanjian is, of course, is an attorney. So you have an ability to work in that area. Those are all just made up structures, just invented. Wouldn't you say? And it's just about knowing which one is being applied, and who the lawmaker was possibly, or how that law can be misinterpreted, interpreted different ways, and work different ways. Kind of isn't it? Wouldn't you say that it's more of an art of working with law than it is of actually knowing right and wrong?
Yeah, the right and wrong is extra.
Right and wrong is
What did
extra. Good point.
What did he say?
You said right and wrong is extra. And it is, because you can actually take something that looks like it's addressing something, but because of the nature of language, the nature of what reason, logic, understanding, and you can bend that in different directions. Sometimes then they come in and make another law that changes it this way, and then they, I could go on and on, but you might as well just watch CNN or something to know more about it. Okay, I've asked 3 times for final questions. I'll go for one more. Is there any on Zoom? I don't think I've tuned into Zoom very much, if at all. Any Zoomers? No? You sure? There's 36, 32 windows. Susan, don't you have a question? I see you there standing next to your painting on your avatar.
Susan Bowling. I guess one question I have is, are the 5 aggregates and the skandhas, are those the same thing?
Yes, 5 aggregates, or the skandha. Skandha means heap. It's just an ancient way of talking about something that gets together and seems like a separate thing. Form, feeling, perception through the eyes, nose, ears, tongue, body, mind, perception. Concept, and then that part of the consciousness that spins around and figures things out with concepts, ideas, and conclusions and exclusions, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth. That part of the mind, and then there's the 6 sense fields, including the mind, that are coming back through all those middle 3 of the intellect or the thinking process, the perception impulse or the perceiving part of the consciousness through vision or through hearing or smell, taste, touch. And then the next one before the last one, which the last one is the body or form. The one just before that is feeling. So it comes through all of that, and that all those different items that are mentioned in the five skandhas or the five heaps or the five aggregates, as you use the word, seems to create the illusion of a separate being who's here and has a body, form. So form, and then the rest of them are all consciousness, aspects of consciousness: form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness. So the idea, one more thing, and then I can respond to anything further you have on that. The one who is confused and operating out of delusion and is deluded will just believe there's someone there, someone called me, who is doing this or that. And the form, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness will all be, if you could see them as little beings, they're all linking arms and they're all working together to reinforce this image of me who's successful, or me who's failing, or me who has been abused, or me and myself, narcissism. But to the one who is enlightened, or to use that word as the title in the title of the talk, enlightened outflow, that person is not at the mercy of the belief in a separate self. That person sees that these aggregates are separate from each other, just like the fingers of a hand: form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness. They're on the same hand, so they're on the same body, but they are separate things, separate situations. Form does not join with the rest of them. To the enlightened one, the one who sees the truth, is not in a prison of belief in a separate being. They actually, it has been said this way, that the form is self-existing. It doesn't need the other ones. The next one, feeling, is self-existing. There's just feeling without backing up to who's feeling it, or going forward into who's perceiving it, or going further forward into the second one or the third one up, which is concept, or the thinking. Who's thinking it? Whose thoughts are these? So the thoughts are allowed to continue. The feelings, the perceptions, and the sense of a form, and the sense of the six sense fields and their objects are allowed to be there, but they do not build up a solid being, even though there's a form here. See this, see it yourself. Change your allegiance over from belief in the five skandhas or this form, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness to see that you are just consciousness only. You're not separate from any bird. You're not separate from any rock. And you're not separate from any sound or any smell or any taste. You're not separate from it. Separated, but that's anytime there's an embodiment of a form, you're going to be separated. But the fundamental understanding is not separate from anything. You don't see an enemy anywhere, and I might take it even further. You don't see a friend anywhere. It's all dependently risen. Is there a further question?
Yeah, Susan, thank you. So when you say not separate, do you mean not different? What do you mean? Thank you, Susan Bowen.
I'm saying the fundamental understanding is that you're not separate. The relative understanding is you're separated. I'm over here, and Susan, you're over there. I don't know if you're in New York or if you're where are you at? New Orleans?
North Carolina.
Hey, I didn't even know. Even my first two guesses were wrong. So, but you could be lying. I mean, you could be in Cuba, and I could be in Portugal, but I'm not. I'm not in Portugal. So this whole idea of location comes into the concept about it. We are very susceptible to anything anybody says. It's much easier just to believe what people say rather than take exception to it. So not separate basically means that you're fundamentally, that's the capital F, you're fundamentally, in other words, absolutely not separate from anything, anyone, any place. But relatively, you're separated, just like the fingers on a hand, or the hands themselves, or this physical form is separate from other physical forms. So that's the illusion part that we are deluded by. If you see that that's an illusion, the illusion doesn't go away. You just no longer are hoodwinked by it. Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
He merited its penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Chiro San Shi Shi San Mu San Mo Gu San Wo Gu The 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all memorable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokuzan Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.
Thank you, Sokuzan.
You're welcome, Cynthia.